Hi, my name is Jeffrey. I am the counseling geek. I'm also a high school counselor in Northern California. And today I'm going to show you how I've been using Gemini to help build tools to help my students and myself in my work. So I'm going to show you a couple different tools, and then we're going to demonstrate how a couple ways that we can use this. But first off, I want to just highlight my school has access to Gemini through our Google suite of applications, and so it is a lockdown version of Gemini. I also have access to Gemini Pro. If you don't have access to Gemini Pro, some of this is still doable, but you might not have as deep of the thinking related to AI, and you might have to be a little bit more careful about using student information or things like that within your Gemini platform. We are lucky enough to not have to necessarily worry so much about that. But I wanted to show you some cool tools, and hopefully you enjoy it. So in Gemini over here, the first thing I'm going to show you is we have a new district policy about our math placement for our incoming ninth graders at our high school. And so we used to have this kind of complicated graphic that we would send out highlighting where kids would go and things like that. And so instead of doing that, what I did is I had, it kind of looked like this. And this is our updated one that I fixed and tried to make even more clear. But again, it's still a little bit messy. And people are like, where do I go? So I also coded down here that I then embedded into our website a simple kind of walk you through questionnaire that students or families can utilize. I also made sure to translate it into Spanish, or you could add additional languages if you chose. But if I hit start assessment, it's going to ask you where you go to school, because that matters in our placement criteria. So if I say, yes, I attend the middle school that's connected to our school, it's going to ask you for some information about your current math class, your typical grades, your state assessment score from 8th grade, and then a math placement test. And then I'm going to hit see placement. And it's going to give me my estimated placement based on the criteria that I plugged into Gemini using some of the information that's helpful. Okay, I could start this over and do this a different way, and it's going to give you my non-TTUSD enrollment. So this kind of takes them directly to where they are based on their estimated placement. That tool, if I was to show you the thought process on Gemini, this is the output. You can copy the code, or it will load a preview of the tool here in the window, which should look fairly similar to what you just saw. And so the prompt that I started with was I uploaded a copy of my 9th grade math placement, which is just that same document, right? And then that was a piece of information that I had it pull the data from. And then I drafted this prompt. Editable tool follows a flow chart logic. 9th graders to identify it, make sure to ask them if they go to our partner school next or first, then tells them to go through here. It gives me a first iteration. I'll open that up and see if I can show you what that first look like. And this is actually, this is the last iteration actually. But it kind of, I walked to and from the AI tool here, like, saying it still didn't work. I pasted a screenshot of what I'm seeing, because one of the things that I was having an issue with, Gemini will not actually host any documents or files or websites or things like that for you. And so you have to actually download it and upload it in some way. And so what I did was I actually created an HTML file, which then I could embed within my Weebly site, which is what you see on the website here. So I had to walk it through a little bit and kind of work on it a little bit. So this is probably an intermediate level coding tool, but I don't know any code at all. I can kind of like maybe troubleshoot or find a couple things, but I don't write code. It's all natural language interaction with the AI tool itself. Okay, so that's one of the cool ways that I've used it. Another cool way that I actually utilized was I had a spreadsheet that I created that would allow students in their senior year or their families to plug in financial aid award letters and then calculate some of the outcomes. So the total costs, how much they're borrowing, what are the 4-year costs, how much of a gap they have, and things like that. The challenge is spreadsheets are a little tricky. If you put things in incorrectly, it could mess up calculations. And so I found that sometimes students would actually accidentally break the calculating features of the spreadsheet. So I thought, oh, let's just plug it into Gemini and see what happens. And so through a little bit of coding, I was able to create a college cost analyzer, which I also uploaded to our website. And you can access all this information that's publicly accessible. So same thing up here on our different pages, you can kind of copy down the URL. And depending on when you're looking at this page is usually pretty evergreen. But ultimately, I can change, again, the language, which I think is important. And you can add, again, multiple languages. I can add additional colleges. So if I wanted to say Uni Y, I could plug in some numbers here. $15,000, we'll say $25,000. Those might be flipped. We'll say 1,000. 500 to 500. Okay, maybe they got a $15,000 grant and a $5,000 scholarship, and $6,500 loan. Not that much, and then they might need a $200 loan, and then say $500 work study. Hit save, and then that will show up here. Okay, so this kind of gives you an at a glance look, and then what I did was that's the list view, and then I can compare. So this is kind of what my spreadsheet actually output. And so they could compare across the board the different schools that they have added that shows how much each college costs, as well as the information about how much maybe they need to search for in scholarships or working, or maybe have a surplus of. Okay, it also allows them to print. So they can print this out and bring it home with them. So that's another cool way. And again, just to demonstrate what Gemini looks like when I'm plugging some of this stuff back and forth. So I'll scroll back up to kind of what the initial prompts were. This was a little bit more in depth than my math one because there was a little bit more back and forth. So again, I uploaded my spreadsheet. I told it to code an app that will replicate the spreadsheet tool, improving the usability of it and allow cost comparisons. Kind of went through some different summary information. You can see it didn't open a preview, just showed code, so I asked it to do that. I asked if I can host it simply, and then it suggested making an HTML file, which then I told it to make a Weebly embed code. And so I had to kind of work through a little bit of the different things and tell it what to do. But again, I'm using plain language. I just told it what I was having trouble with, and it kind of worked through it, and then it spit out this code. And so again, this doesn't mean anything to really anybody other than a web browser or like a web browser or a super web coder. But you just can basically copy and paste this, put it into a notepad document, a text box document, save it as .html, and you can open it in a browser. And then they can also add some embed code, which, like I told it down here, to I had to troubleshoot a couple things, like the display was not opening correctly, so I kind of gave it some instructions of how to do that. Another thing that I've utilized Gemini for is creating, I'm also the AP coordinator, and so creating some information about helping me coordinate AP exams. And I used some of the resources that the College Board puts out about the different AP exams and accommodations and scheduling and things like that, and created two tools that are kind of like an internal document for us to use. One of them is exam time calculator. Okay, and so this is the Gemini process that I used to create this. So if we scroll back up, once again, getting back to the top, this took a little bit of iteration as well. Okay, I kind of told it some context. Can you help me code that will help me calculate AP exam times by subject, including common additional time or break accommodations, usually only official guidance, blah, blah, blah. So I'm able to then download this code into that notepad and create this coordinator guide. And so what I did was I provided the exam manuals that they provide us that gives the timing of each exam, because if you're a coordinator, you know they're all a little bit different. And then what I can do is I can select the different exams that I want to calculate. And this is helpful because maybe I'm looking at when students will potentially be released. A lot of times our athletes have conflicts, and so the coaches might need to know when this test might be over. So I can build in some general buffers. Okay, so I can say, like, generally I can get through the administration in say 25 minutes. And then once the actual timer of whatever the last part is over, then it usually takes me about 10 minutes to actually collect things and dismiss students. And so this will tell me if I start this at 8:35, that means that the students arrive at 8:10. We start section 1 around 8:35. There's a break at 9:35. My students, hypothetically for human geography, will be dismissed around 11:10. Okay, so I can use this as a ballpark figure to know when this room will be available next for when students may be released to families or coaches. And then I can also make tweaks because sometimes it's hard to calculate maybe the extended time. So if I wanted to add 50% extended time, it will also work on the correct accommodations and plugging in the additional time here. So instead of 11 something, now it's 125 for 100% extended time. Okay, and that adjusts based on which exam you're giving as well. Okay, so this is a really cool tool. Once again, I was able to upload information. I added details on here, like I downloaded PDFs of the different coordinator manuals that it was able to utilize to calculate the different times, as well as the SSD manuals. So when you're trying to create something like a tool like this, you want to make sure you're accessing the expert content guidance that you maybe have that you're maybe not thinking about, that can provide the AI tool the context it needs to give you the right information back without having to type it all out. So if there's resources out there, PDFs, things like that, definitely include those in your process of developing some of these tools. And then lastly, before I show you an example of kind of building one of these things, is I had an exam scheduler. So I also have to think about what rooms are being used for this process, and kind of I used to have this spreadsheet also that I would kind of like type things in and stuff, but I said, you know what, I bet I can make something that probably looks better and functions a little bit better. And so I asked Gemini to kind of code this tool, and this again is an HTML file. You can see up here this URL that's in my browser. It's not a web URL, it's a URL for a computer device, so it's a file on my computer. And so the nice thing is I can put as much personal information or private information on here because it's not going anywhere, it's living on my computer. And I can also share this file with other people. And so if I uploaded this file to someone else, they could download it and open it on their own computer and have their own version of this without having, you don't need internet access, you just need your device. And so the nice thing is I can kind of like customize this for my own school. So what I did was I kind of added all the different exams. What I can actually do is I also coded it to let me select which exams my school is offering in a given year. So sometimes we have certain exams and other years we don't. So I'm able to say, disable Physics 2. And then when I go back to the scheduler, we should see Physics 2 down here when I turn it back on. I'm able to add or remove or update different rooms. So if we have a gym or a different classroom that we're utilizing that also has a certain capacity of students, I can indicate that. And then I can also add a proctor database. So if I wanted to kind of like pre-think about which proctors were going to be where, I could type in, I knew the names of those people or just wanted to have a placeholder. I could type those things in there so I can then go back into my scheduler. And then what I do is I can drag and drop things. So if I wanted to have biology in the gym and say in the conference room, and Mr. Smith was proctoring, and this was a student with accommodated time, and then we had proctor with a sub in there, and then say we had a microeconomics in the afternoon in the gym. Actually, that would be fine with, we'll call Mr. Alex as well. I can do that, and I can also just drag and drop stuff. So if I wanted to pull this over here, I could do that, but it's going to tell me, oh, there's a conflict. I have it scheduled in the same room. That's an issue, right? So it's pretty cool what you can do with some of this stuff, and you can do this with a lot of different things. This just happens to be an exam. If you wanted to do this with a calendar, if you wanted to do this with different complicated or tedious processes, you could totally work on a code within Gemini to do this process. ChatGPT also does similar types of things. You could have it code HTML or different resources as well. If you wanted to, you could work even deeper and figure out a way to host this on a website and create more of a web-facing tool if you wanted to, say, publish it online, similar to what I might show you in the future, which is something I'm developing on bolt.new that has some really great hosting options that allows you to have a web-based tool. And then finally, you have this room schedule. So if I wanted to figure out which rooms are being, the gym is being used and what time, I can do that this way. And then I can print it, and it will print out the different rooms at a glance, which is really cool. Grand scheme of things for these different timeframes and processes, this probably took me maybe an hour to kind of go back and forth with, including the thinking time with Gemini for kind of these different tools. So the AP exam scheduling tool, and some of it was just troubleshooting. It was kind of figuring out what was going on wrong and why, and kind of working with Gemini to kind of tell me what was wrong, right? So I told it, can you add a room schedule feature, the ability to print schedules just by the room, and that's where you just saw what I had completed. So let's try something. I want to see if we can do this live real quick as we wrap up this video. So I already have kind of a prompt roughly built that ChatGPT or Gemini actually wrote for me a little bit, and I tweaked. And so one of the things that you can do when you're using Gemini is, again, if you have files you wanted to upload, so say you wanted to use a logo, or if you wanted to provide, again, knowledge or content to reference when it's using this information, you could do that there. You can toggle which tool you're using, right? So I have access to Pro, so I'm going to probably use that one. That's the most comprehensive. And then the tool that I like to use when I'm building a kind of a tool like the scheduler, what we're going to do right now, is Canvas, because that's usually what will help us visualize our content, which is helpful. Again, you can't really read the file itself. So we use Canvas, and it'll actually kind of give us a preview typically. So again, I haven't tested this. We're going to see how this goes as we go together. So I'm going to paste this in, and I'll show you what this looks like. So we're going to build a grounding and breathing site for anxiety relief. So that's something maybe a student could access on a computer or a tablet or something like that potentially might help walk them through it. Obviously, there's things like this potentially online, but this might be a nice way to customize something for your own school, or like have access to potentially without needing internet access or similar things. So I listed a list of features, asked for duration, gave it a couple ideas. Center the screen with a large soft blue circle, which is kind of like, potentially going to be growing, which we say next. Animate it, expand for 4 seconds, say inhale, blah, blah, blah. And then add a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding checklist with the checkboxes. 5 things you see, use a calming minimal aesthetic, and then create a selection of royalty-free music. So I'm going to hit go. We're going to see what it does, see how long it takes us to think through this, and then we'll see the results. So I'm going to fast forward through the thinking process, and I'll come back when it is done thinking. All right, so it's done thinking. It thought for maybe 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and it kind of gave me a summary here. I can always click this and see what its really thought process looks like if I ever wanted to know, why did you do this, or what could I do to potentially prompt you differently. Reading through some of this could be helpful. It's nice to know kind of what, maybe it's thinking in a backwards manner when you want to have it kind of proceed differently. You could instruct it to do that or change your prompting next time. But it gave me an overview of what it looks like. And then as it's typing, it'll update, again, all of this stuff, okay? It's going to give me also, once it actually loaded, it pulled up this preview. And as you can see, this is already a pretty cool thing. This little error right here, which again, like I said, I'm developing this live. I don't know how this is going to go. So it says there was something that went wrong. So there's a problem with your code. I could click Show Console, and it's going to tell me what this is, okay? I don't know what that is. So I'm just going to tell it to fix the error, and we're going to see what happens with that. All right, so we're back. So it actually analyzed and fixed that error, it looks like. So it said it made some changes. And again, if I wanted to figure out what the heck it was doing, I could learn a little bit by showing the thinking here. But ultimately, I don't know what all this stuff really means, so I don't really care that much. So that is what happened. And so ultimately, it will give us an updated version of what this looks like. And so I'm going to test it and see. So let's pull it up. Let's see. Let's try meditation. Let's try for a minute. And then I'm just going to hit begin session and see what happens. So if you can hear that, it has a soothing meditative background. It does the thing. It has a small timer up here. It is expanding the blue circle and saying inhale, keep it steady. And then it's going to say exhale, release all the tension. Okay, it has an end session button if we need to finish that early. Okay, and then we can see the grounding checklist down below. Now, there's a couple things that I might want to do next. And so if I was to do that, you could ask for Gemini features. So this might be adding AI tools. I could select certain things. So if I wanted to pick a certain elements or highlight a certain thing, so I'm going to go like this and highlight that area, because one thing I notice is it cuts off the top. So it cuts off the top of the blue circle when it is at its largest. Okay, and you can see it automatically ended. So my minute was up. And so I could add custom minutes, I could change the music, and then it had an end thing if you notice that as well. So from this point forward, I'm now going to be refining what this tool looks like. And so I'm going to do this iteration of the refinement, and then I'm going to download it and hopefully open it on my computer and see if it works. Once again, this is like less than 5 or 10 minutes of actual work time on it. So there might be some additional things once we download it and open it that might not be working correctly on our local file, but we're going to test it out and see. We'll just see what happens. So I'm going to let this finish thinking here. It's going to recode, and then I'll come back to you. All right, so we're back now, and so you can see it updated the clipping issue, increased the size of the area surrounding the circle from 64 pixels, is my guess, to 80. And so it should do that. So we'll go ahead and test it and see. We'll hit 1 minute again. I'm going to select rain this time, and we'll hit begin session. So it looks like it needs to be a little bit bigger. So if I was going forward with it, I would actually tell it to redo this and say make it a little bit larger. The other thing is this select piece. When you're actively doing something, it might not capture it. So what I might do instead would be maybe taking a screenshot of it when it looks like that, so I can actually picture when it's coming out that direction. And then I might paste that. You could just Control V or Command V in there and say, didn't quite get it. Check the spacing. See screenshot. And then let it run it again. So now it has a visual representation of what I mean, and it has this line on top. I could even mark up that screenshot and point an arrow at what I'm talking about, or circle things, and that is a nice way to kind of show the AI tool what I want it to do. If I didn't like any elements or color schemes, I could tell it to fix those things, right? If I wanted to make sure that this end session wasn't behind the circle in the middle of it to let me stop it at any time, I might want to tell it to do that in the future. Okay, so I'm going to let it do this final code, and then I'm going to copy and paste over to my notepad file, and then we'll open it up as a local file and see if it still works. So let me finish this. I'll come back to you when it's done coding. We'll copy and paste and wrap up this video. All right, so we're back. That actually didn't take that long. So it gives me a quick update. I'm just going to test it really quick. We'll try the meditation one. And it keeps that out there. I still don't like the hard cutoff. I would fix that probably in the future, but we're going to stop for here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit end session. It's going to stop it. You see the music fades in and out. And then to actually copy and paste and create a local file, what I need to do is get out of the preview, and I'm going to go over to the code option here. And you can see this is an HTML document. And so I'm just going to click in the box here. I'm going to hit Control or Command A, and then Control or Command C, and pull over my notepad. I'm going to paste that exactly as written into here. And I'm going to hit Save As, and I'll title the document whatever I want. So let's see, I might say grounding. And then you do need to change, it's going to default to text usually, so I need to change this to HTML to make sure that it opens correctly. So I'm going to hit Save. I'm going to pull that up in my Explorer menu here. A lot of the same stuff. Let's try the yoga. Oh, it didn't. See, it even gives me an error. I'm gonna do 3 minutes just for fun. The music works. I don't know if that works offline or not, but now I can check different things. Okay. And then you can make changes. If you wanted to make something with box breathing, you could do that too. It's an amazing tool that you can create a lot of really cool, useful things really quickly that then you can kind of grow and iterate and make updates to, share with students or families. If you wanted to create a automated check-in and check-out system, or a student waiting list on an iPad or a computer in your office. There's a number of different things you could potentially use Gemini for to help you code in your process as a school counselor. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, once again, my name's Jeff. I'm a high school counselor. I'm along with you. But I also have a blog. You could check out more information about some of the cool tech things that I've gotten into over the years. It's called The Counseling Geek, www.thecounselinggeek.com. And you can check out some of the different resources that are available there. Thank you for watching. Have a great one.